Buddham Sharanam Gacchami.
Buddham Sharanam Gacchami.
Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami.
Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami.
Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami.
Sangham Sharanam Gacchami.
Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami.
Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami.
Tadalame Jepenge, Shabjebema la Duchin, Pomokune Dozem, Roma Yumla Chaze lo, Dare du Dare Dure so, Dare du Dare Dure so, Dare Dare Dure so. Dare du Dare Dure so, 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 Dare du Dare Dure so. Dare du Dare Dure so, 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 Dare du Dare Dure so. Dare du Dare Dure so, 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 Dare du Dare Dure so. Dare du Dare Dure so, Dare du Dare Dure so, Dare du Dare Dure so, Dare Dare Dure so, Dare du 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 Dare Dure so. Dare du Dare Dure so, 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 Dare du Dare Dure so. Dare du Dare Dure so, 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 Dare du Dare Dure so. Dare du Dare Dure so, 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 Dare du Dare Dure so. Dare du Dare Dure so, Dare du Dare Dure so, Dare du Dare Dure so, Dare du Dare Dure so. Dare du Dare Dure so, Gewa di Yudu. Homa Doma Drujun and Ravajik Yamalu Bati Salam Gubara Sho. Tashi delay. So in the last session, we discussed a little bit about the 12 links of dependent origination. The sequence of the 12 links of dependent origination that is explained in the text, right from ignorance down to old age and death. That sequence 12 links of dependent origination is explained in terms of how we are experiencing right now when we have already taken birth. But that doesn't mean that the link will come in that way in one lifetime. Actually, that 12 link can be divided into 2 lives, 3 lives, or many, many lives. So So, for example, the ignorance that we have right now, and because of that ignorance, we engage in an action that leaves an imprint on the consciousness. So this will become the cause for our next rebirth. So the causes for the next rebirth is here with us right now. Now, if these three, the ignorance, then the action and the consciousness, normally consciousness at the time of the cause, these three, when because of the action, when an imprint is left on the consciousness, then before you die, if that is activated or if that is nourished by craving, grasping, and then fully empowered by the 10th, which is called existence, so then you already have accumulated 6 causes in this life. And then in the next life, you will experience the rest 6. That's one possibility. Another possibility is in this life, we may accumulate the 3 causes, and then without like activating them or nourishing them by craving and so forth, it may take many lives. It may take 3 lives. So it is like this. For example, I mean, as far as the actions that we do, it is simply countless. In one day, we do so many different actions, positive, negative, mixed, neutral, so many things, right? So all these actions leaves an imprint on the mind. Now, which of these imprints will get activated first depends on when you have done, proximity to the time when you've done, and also which one of these actions are heavier. So out of these countless actions that you have done, the ones that are heaviest will produce their result first. Heavy one. If they're all same in terms of heaviness, then those which you have done quite recently, they will give fruit. If that is also same, then what fruit will be there dependent on in what area you are more habituated. So there are many factors like that. Okay, so to make a long story short, what is important is we take this countless rebirth in the samsara primarily because of ignorance. Okay, so the purpose of studying these 12 links of dependent origination is, the 12 links of dependent origination is really compared to a firebrand. If you move a firebrand, it really looks like it's one circle, unending circle. So the 12 links of dependent origination is kind of unending circles. Unless you cut that circle by removing the ignorance, it will continue. It will continue. That's called samsara. And what will continue is our life in the samsara, the psychophysical aggregate. So the so-called samsara is not an external, world or anything. It primarily refers to our own psychophysical aggregate, which is projected into this life through the force of action and negative emotions. So thereby you are endlessly recycled, right? So therefore, the important point to note is ignorance. At every sphere, at every level, those negative actions that we do that project us into the samsara, or the silly mistakes that we make in our daily life, all this is because of ignorance, lack of awareness, lack of mindfulness, whatever you want to call it. So therefore, in order to reduce all kind of problems, difficulties, and particularly to eradicate, ignorance, eradicate all kind of sufferings, it is really important to go to the root, right? Let me give you a very simple example. Many a times we unnecessarily experience suffering. I'm not talking about the bigger suffering in the samsara and things like that, but even when you go for a shopping, or even when you make a friendship, you just go by the appearances. The commodity looked nice, the salesperson looked nice, and the display is nice, then your senses are duped, and then you immediately make friends with somebody or buy their commodity, things like that. And then later on, you realize, when you develop a little bit of better sense, then you realize, oh, stupid me. You see? So this is something that we experience all the time. So therefore, purpose of this kind of study is, of course, for removing the negative emotions and come out of the samsara. But even on a day-to-day basis, it is really, really important to remain careful, mindful, aware, and alert. Very important. Human beings are normally not that alert because we are so confident of our brain, stupid brain, right? As I mentioned earlier, the birds and the animals, they are very alert. You see, even if you watch a deer drinking water, while sipping water, the deer is really like very careful, where the crocodiles might jump from the water or whatever, he's very watchful. And we are not that watchful because we are overconfident of our thinking power. But thinking power, unless you check carefully, the thinking power is predominantly negated, dominated by short-sightedness, narrow-mindedness, and biased to what belongs to you, biased especially to yourself. Whatever we have this very, very ugly habit, called self-cherishing attitude or self-grasping, right? So because of that, we tend to justify whatever we do as something perfect, good, and try to nullify and do away with whatever other people say. We don't listen carefully. We are immediately ready to quarrel and fight to prove how good you are, how correct you are. The others are stupid, something like that. So that makes the mess in the world. So therefore, it is really, really important to, think carefully what you are saying, what you are doing. We may not be always successful. We are not enlightened Buddhas, but if you start making an attempt, then gradually you can see the transformation and how much more peace and happiness you will get by just disciplining yourself and controlling yourself, right? Yes, it is true that we get a lot of problems from outside, but the problems that we get from outside, we don't have much control. You can make a hue and cry, but you don't have the control over the weather. You don't have the control over how what people talk about you, how they dress, whether you like it or not. You don't have control, but you have control over yourself. So the first rule of the game is, as the Buddha said, self is the protector of the self. No one else can be the self. At the end of the day, unless you have that right perspective, unless you have calmness of mind, unless you have patience, no amount of changing the external situation will help you. And the problem of the modern world is we keep on changing the external paraphernalia, right? Thinking that your happiness and peace will come from there, right? So unless you change your mental attitude, mental perspective, and think in a more holistic way and act in a way so that everybody will get benefit. If you don't do that, we are going to get many, many more pandemics. I'm trying to warn you a little bit. You see, we don't take the responsibility. You see, we pollute the air, pollute the water. Don't care about our own rubbish, things like that, and then everybody suffer. Mosquito spreads, everywhere. I mean, even in big cities like Delhi, because of this lack of care from the public. Every year we get problems from mosquito and this, this, that, so many problems, diseases, which can be easily stopped if we adopt a little bit of sense of responsibility and adopt a little bit of, cleanliness and things like that. We can, but we're not doing. So it's really, really, really important to start from our day-to-day life and then go deeper and deeper, and then deal with the negative emotions. But if there is a better solution from outside, simply by developing the technological appliances, please share that good news to me. I'll be happy to give up Buddhist practice and go after the technological appliances. But I'm 100% sure that that is not possible. You know, in the West today, there are a group who now talk about positive psychology. So they did a lot of research. There was a time when people were just talking about suffering, and hardly anybody was talking about happiness. So now they have started talking about this positive psychology, which basically, in which field, what they have done, they did a lot of research, scientific research, to find out from what is the source of happiness, right? So they found there big differences in terms of happiness between two towns, between two cities, between two families, and then did like many years of experiments saying why this city has more happiness, why this family has more happiness, things like that. So there can be many reasons. It may be the weather, it may be the food, it may be the pollution, so many things that they took into account all of these possible factors. But at the end of the day, what they found is these external factors doesn't really matter much. They do make some difference, but not much. At the end of the day, they found that it is your mental calmness, your mental perspective. For example, they did experiment with like over 200 something nuns. Okay, these nuns basically have the same way of life. The food they take is also bland, not very tasty as a nun. And then also they do their regular prayer, meditation, all those wonderful things which ordinary people don't do. They've been doing all this, but even among these nuns, there is a differences in terms of their longevity, in terms of their happiness and things like that. So on researching, they found that those nuns who are more open-minded, who smile more, who laugh more, not the sarcastic smile, genuine smile, then they found this nuns live much more. And they did this experiment for like several years. So according to them, just by looking at the eyes of people, just by looking at their facial expression, you can really find out how kind of, not exactly, but kind of how long that person is going to live. So they found people who are, mentally happy, open-minded, and love a lot and smile a lot. Their marriage is better, their business is better, right? So they in fact used a phrase, they call it nuns who love live long, right? So I'm not going to tell everything, but a lot of experiments they have done. So this is very true in accordance with the teaching of the Buddha, where the Buddha always said, be calm, be patient, be tolerant, live harmoniously. That's what Buddhist teachings are saying. So at the end of the day, now it seems more and more, clear that your, internal transformation, changing your perspective from negative to the right, is at the end of the day the only sure solution for all our maladies, right? So therefore, choice is yours. Happiness, whether you want to experience happiness, whether you want to experience suffering, the choice is primarily yours. You can keep on saying that, no, it's not in my hand, it's the society, it's the environment. You can always, everybody's asking this question, this person, this neighbor, this and that. But I'm telling you that you're not going to eliminate them unless you're going to shoot them, right? So the only solution at the end of the day is change your perspective, change your conduct, change your behavior, and think more about the positive things, not just keep on like thinking about the negative things, the things you don't have, your problems. If you keep on counting your problems, your miseries, your sickness and things like that, you will find enough reason to get depressed. But that's not the complete story of your life. There are many, many good things. So think about those good things also and take good care of oneself. For example, we talk so much about the importance of love and compassion in Buddhism, but that doesn't mean that you only meditate on love and compassion, don't eat good food, don't take rest. We are not saying that. You need all these things. So out of this, the primary factor is your mental calmness, but the contributing factors also like going with a good friend, doing some physical exercise, many things you can do. So that's important. So there's the purpose of studying these 12 links of dependent origination or the rising of dependent origination in general. Because the one important counter force that would eliminate ignorance is wisdom, understanding, shunyata, which means wisdom, understanding, dependent origination. The ignorance that we are targeting here refers to ignorance, a mind which sees things as having independent existence. So the counter force for that is if you develop wisdom that sees things as interconnected, interrelated, that will change the whole scenario. Of course, completely uprooting the negative emotion takes time, but just having some perspective that nothing comes from one cause, one factor, nothing comes without causes and conditions. They come by depending on multiplicity of causes, conditions will lighten your burden, change your perspective. And I remember very well, a long time back, many years back, when this dictator Saddam Hussein was quite well known and notorious. And then everybody was criticizing him and things like that. Finally, he was killed and things like that. So at that time, everybody was criticizing Saddam Hussein. But then His Holiness said that yes, it is true, Saddam Hussein may be a dictator, very negative, but who had given him the arms? Meaning that if Saddam Hussein may be an embodiment of all the negativities, but if he is without any ammunitions, arms, and weapons, he's not going to. He will be not capable of doing all these destructive activities. So the arms and weapons are supplied by those people who are criticizing. So meaning that things come, positive, negative things come not from one cause, one condition, but from multiplicity of causes and conditions. So when you're able to think in that way, then your perspective gets enlarged, broadened. Like for example, if somebody says something nasty or does something nasty to you, if you focus only at that person, that he is the one who is making my life miserable, he is the only one, he is the only bad thing, then your mind is now fixed there, and you will not find the solution. But if you think in a larger perspective, okay, this person did this bad thing to me, but why this person did these bad things to you? Maybe he has a problem in his family. Maybe he is mentally sick, right? And also maybe my very presence in front of that person was a mistake. You have presented yourself as a target to that person. One, from a bigger circle, you came into this world projected by negative actions and afflictive emotions. So in that sense, you have presented yourself as a target in this world that made you vulnerable. So if you don't want to be target, you don't want other people to bully you, exploit you, then stop taking birth in this world. So that's the bigger viewpoint. Then on a very mundane, day-to-day lives account also, if you go to wrong place, relate to the wrong person, right? Go to the wrong environment, you're presenting yourself as the target and you become susceptible to all those problems, right? So therefore, it is not just the environment and people, but yourself who is to be blamed or responsible. And as I mentioned earlier, even if the environment, other people are wrong, there is not much, there's not much you can do immediately to get rid of them. Of course, on a larger scale, we can all mobilize things and try to change the society and the universe and things like that. But that takes time. It's not easy, right? But instead of that, the one step that you can take right away is change your perspective, adopt the right conduct, not to go to the wrong place, not to associate with the wrong person and things like that, then you will be fine. Then you will be fine, right? So the point that I'm making is, if we want to get out of the problem, we need to get rid of many of these addictions, many of these addictions. If you want to get cured from your physical illness or from your mental illness, you need to know that these are probably a result of past karma to some extent, but mainly because of your addiction in this very life. It may be addiction to other people, it may be addiction to alcohol, it may be addiction to coffee, it may be addiction to overeating, There are countless addictions, right? So you need to, you see, the meaning. I was reading this text today, this Rice Seedling Sutra. I was reading a little bit that text. Then there it explains the meaning of illness or sickness. Illness basically means imbalance of the 4 or 5 elements that we have. Nothing more than that. Imbalance. When the earth, water, fire, and so forth that is there, when they become a little bit disturbed and becomes imbalanced, then you get sick. If the fire becomes more powerful than the wind, you will get fever. If wind becomes more powerful than the fire and so forth, you will get angry or very excited, things like that. So therefore, gaining health basically means maintaining the equality of all the 4 or 5 elements. How can you do that? You can do that by taking the right food, right amount of food, the food that is necessary for fire, necessary for water, necessary for things like that. So that they're all of equal power, right? So there you need to be very careful, not only in terms of doing deeper meditation, but also in terms of your gaining the right health. You need to be very careful, and you can't blame this to others, right? Reduce, eating all this packaged food and things like that. You can save money, you can improve your health. It's 100% sure. So if you are being lazy and don't cook and go out, eat in the restaurant, then the amount of frying that they've done in the restaurant, the quality of the oil that they've used in the restaurant, right? In my own case, I can't eat in one hotel, continuously, unless it's a very special hotel. Many of these dabas, I can't eat like for 2 days. That is the impact. So we have to be very careful. We have to be very careful. We have to be very careful, and there's a reason to be careful, because this human life is called precious human life, which is not easy to get, right? So today, luckily, you have got it. So therefore, you have to use it in the best possible way, not to waste it for small things which even animals can achieve, or very small things which even small innocent child can do. So we should be a mature person. Mature person means, as I mentioned earlier, mature person means someone whose concern for others outweighs your concern for yourself. Then it means you're matured, which is the spirit of bodhicitta, altruism. And when you think about the, well-being of others more than yourself, and that makes perfect sense, because others are much more than you in terms of number and so forth, right? So therefore, in the next verse number 112, it says, the dependent origination is the most cherished and profound treasure of the jinas. Jinas means victors. Victors means Buddha, because he had conquered the negative emotions. So the victor's speech. Whoever is able to see this sees Buddha, supreme knower of reality. So that means dependent origination is the root, is the most highly cherished and profound treasure. Treasure is not your money. Treasure is not your gold, because gold and other things, they are material, things, and they can be lost, they can be stolen. Your money also not so sure, even in the bank is not sure what policies will come up, what income tax will say, it's not very sure, right? Although I'm not saying that you don't need, but this inner qualities like understanding of dependent origination is really the most cherished wealth, treasure, because it is by this treasure that you can eradicate and eliminate ignorance completely. So that's the most important. Out of all the teachings that the Buddhas gave, this is the most important teaching. Now, whoever is able to see this, whoever is able to see emptiness, whoever is able to see the dependent origination, can see the Buddha. So that means there's another sutra, the sutra that I referred, the rice seedling sutra. There it says, one who sees dependent origination sees the Dharma. One who sees the Dharma sees the Buddha. Meaning that one who sees the dependent origination sees the Dharma means sees the Eighth Noble Path. Dharma means Eighth Noble Path. Okay? Meaning, precisely, it means one who sees dependent origination, then he is able to cultivate this Eighth Noble Paths, meaning that your thought will be perfect, your speech will be perfect, your action will be perfect. Because now you have that right view, dependent origination. And when you follow this Eighth Noble Path, then of course you will be able to see the Buddha, which basically means the ultimate nature of the mind, the Dharmakaya. Because when you're able to see dependent origination, you're at the end of the day, you're able to see shunyata, emptiness. And that the emptiness nature of the mind of the Buddha itself is called the truth body or the Dharmakaya. So that is what he's saying. Whoever is able to see this dependent origination sees the Dharma, and one who is able to see the Dharma, the Eighth Noble Path, sees the Buddha. And who is Buddha? Supreme knower of reality. Buddha became the supreme knower of reality or omniscient. Buddha was not omniscient right from the beginning. We need to make a distinction here. Buddha was also, in the very beginning, Buddha was like you and like me, with all the, faults and negative emotions and so forth. But through his practice of the path, gradually he became enlightened. So that is also very encouraging to all of us. However stupid you think you are, however ignorant you think you are, if you make the effort, you can shine out. That's 100% sure. In my own life, I know some people who in the beginning of their study seems mind is not very sharp, but when they make repeated effort, then gradually after 2-3 years, their mind becomes very clear, right? Because one good quality with the mind is if you train the mind, it can be trained to a limitless state. That's good news. It's not like training the body. If you train the body, you can develop it to some extent, but not to a limitless extent. But with the mind, provided if you use it, if you train it, you can develop your mind to a limitless state. Okay? So therefore, as I said, one who sees the dependent origination, sees the Dharma, that's explained in the next verse. Right view, livelihood, effort, recollection, samadhi, speech, activity, right conceptualization are the 8 limbs of the path. Meditate upon them in order to attain peace. So when you, especially these are called Eighth Noble Path, because path here refers to primarily the path of meditation. When you reach the state of path of meditation, you are associated with this 8 branches. Okay, so the first is right view. In terms of sequence, the first is right view. So whether you explain this from a higher point of view or a lower point of view, even in our ordinary life, the first and most important thing is you should have the right view, right understanding. Then as you go higher, the right view means view that understands the way things are, the view that understands the shunyata and things like that, dependent origination and things like that. And once you have that right view, Your now this sequence is a little bit not correct, because the actual sequence is you should have the right view, and after with the right view, then you will have this right conceptualization, meaning you will develop that right thought, what to do, what not to do, and from there, then right speech actually based on this correct thought. The speech that comes will also be a beneficial one, positive one, not negative one. Okay. And then right action. Then after that, right livelihood. Then right effort, right mindfulness, right meditative stabilization. So that is the general process of explanation. Okay. So the meaning is that the most important thing is you should have right view, and that right view will help you develop the right thought. And when you have the right thought, the speech that you will make will also be right and correct. And then the livelihood that you will enjoy will also be right. You see, everything, as we say, everything is dependent on your mental perspective, right? So that origin of all the activities, the mind itself is, if correct, then everything will be okay. And then you will make effort towards your spiritual practice. And then maintaining mindfulness, as we explained earlier, mindfulness of the body, the mind, Dharma, and so forth. And then meditative stabilization. In order to achieve any higher realization and spiritual practice, concentration is the key. Right? So these are the 8 limbs of the path. Meditate upon them in order to attain peace. And this 8 noble path is taught right after Buddha's enlightenment. Because right after the enlightenment, when Buddha gave the teaching, he actually taught the middle way. And that middle way is related to the teaching on the 8 noble path, right in the beginning. So normally in the scriptural text, these 8 noble paths are explained with reference to higher spiritual paths, like path of seeing, path of meditation, and things like that. But if you go to some Pali tradition, and also in some of the Tibetan text also, this practice of this 8 path can also be referred to our daily life, as I hinted earlier. That in our daily life also the first and foremost thing is that you should have the right mental perspective, and then the right thought or right motivation, and then the speech and livelihood, effort, and all this will come. All right. And the next verse. So in the next verse, it speaks a little bit about the focus and aspect of the Four Noble Truth. All that arises is suffering. Craving is its vast origination. Its cessation is liberation. The path for attaining this is the Eightfold Path. So all that arises is suffering. This speaks about the truth of the suffering, First Noble Truth. And then second is craving. It talks about the origin of suffering. The second of the Four Noble Truth. Its cessation is the Third Noble Truth, is liberation. And then the path, true path. So this speaks about the Four Noble Truths. And the path here refers to, as we have already discussed, the Eightfold Path. So now here, in this case, the emphasis that is being laid on is craving. When we talk about suffering in the samsara, the origin or source of that suffering is craving. And in order to emphasize the very destructive effect of craving, the text says craving is a vast origination. Remember when when we read these 12 links of dependent origination, and then after contact, we develop feeling, and after feeling, of suffering, happiness, and so forth, then we develop craving. That I want this, I don't want that kind of craving. Then when you develop craving, then after that, there's grasping, then it becomes something like a strong addiction. Then you will actually go for that. When you have the craving, you just have that desire to enjoy that, but less grasping, right? But when you develop grasping, then you will run around that I need to get this. Without this, I can't live. So that makes you suffer. Then now you are completely stuck into that, right? So many a times, sometimes, of course, most of the time you find ignorance as the main cause of all the suffering, but then you will also come across many texts which talks about craving or attachment as the source of suffering. Because for our next rebirth, one of the main causes that projects our life into the next life is starting from craving, right? Craving, and then grasping. Craving and grasping, these are the two things, but the main is craving. So that's what he's saying here. That being so means this being the Four Noble Truth, that being so, strive always in order to see the four higher truths. Even those householders in whose laps rest great worldly riches can, through knowledge, cross the river of the mental afflictions. So he's now finally addressing the king by saying that this being so, this is the reality of 12 links of dependent origination, the importance of understanding the noble truth, and especially at this very point, the importance of the Four Noble Truth. This being so, always, to see the four higher truths. The Four Noble Truth is the first teaching that the Buddha gave, and very, very profound. The Four Noble Truth can be explained in terms of its features. The truth of suffering has four features. The origin of suffering has four features. Cessation has four features. And then the path has four features, right? So therefore, when Buddha gave this teaching on the Four Noble Truth, first he said, this is true suffering. This is true suffering. This is true origin of suffering. This is true cessation. This is the path. So he said, this means here, this psychophysical aggregate is the true suffering. We talk so much about suffering. We talk so much about impermanence, that other phenomena like mountain, river, they are impermanent. That is true. But that is not our main concern. Our main concern is you are subjected to suffering. You are subject to suffering because of your volatility, because of your impermanent nature, because of your transient nature. So your task at hand is how to get rid of that suffering, get rid of that afflictive emotion that is there within yourself. So therefore, he is using the word this. This is true suffering. This is true origin of suffering. This is true cessation. This is true path. That means path also you have to generate in yourself. Cessation also you have to actualize by yourself. And the origin of suffering is also there within you. Craving, grasping. We are not talking about craving and grasping in somebody else's mind. Their negative emotion may be very bad, but they cannot project us into samsara. It is my own negative emotions which projects me into the samsara. So therefore, this. So that is the first cycle of teaching that he gave. Then in the second cycle of the teaching on the Four Noble Truth, he said, suffering must be known. Origin of suffering must be eliminated. True cessation must be actualized. True path must be meditated. See, now you are given a homework, You must do this, you must do this, you must do this. So as a practitioner, now we need to really honestly see how much we are doing. How much is our understanding of suffering? How much is our understanding of origin of suffering and so forth? Then how much effort we are genuinely making to reduce the suffering, especially the origin or sources of suffering, things like that. And how much we are moving towards liberation, nirvana, we have to see. So that's the second round of teaching on the Four Noble Truth. Then in the third round of the teaching of the Four Noble Truth, he said, suffering is to be known, but there's nothing to know. True origin of suffering must be eliminated, but there's nothing to eliminate. True cessation must be actualized, but there is nothing to actualize. True path must be meditated, but there is nothing to meditate. Now, this can be interpreted into two ways. One, true suffering must be known, but there's nothing to know means that true suffering should be known by us ordinary people. But when you get enlightened, then there's no need to know about true suffering. There's no suffering in that enlightened state. There's one way of explanation applicable to the rest of the Three Noble Truths also. The second process of explanation is the suffering must be known, but there is no suffering which has independent existence. So therefore, suffering must be known, but there's nothing to know means there is nothing to know a suffering which has independent existence. Sufferings and origin of suffering, they all have interdependent origination. So that is good news. Because if the suffering and the origin of suffering exist inherently, independently, doesn't matter how much effort you make, you can't do anything. That will not make any impact on them because they are there by themselves. They'll be there forever. But that's not the case. They're dependent on multiplicity of causes and conditions. Right? So understanding the Four Noble Truths basically means lessening the negative side. So sometimes the true suffering and true origin of suffering, they are lumped together as the impure side. And the true cessation and the path leading to the true cessation are put together and call them the pure side. So what we need to do as a practitioner is to lessen and purify and eradicate the impure side and strengthen, right? And generate and cultivate the pure side within our mind. So that is our job. Okay. So now what he said in this verse is that being so strive always in order to see the four higher truths, even those householders in whose laps rest great worldly riches can through knowledge cross the river of the mental affliction. Now this is being told to the king in order to encourage him. Not only the king, all of us. Many of us might think, oh, these monks may be able to do practice because they are not very busy. They don't have to look after their family and things like that. But I am somebody, I'm a householder. I have to look after my kid. I have to look after my husband, wife, brother, sister, things like that. So I have not much time. I can't do practice. Many people think like that. So in this, it is in this context that the Buddha says, even those householders in whose laps rest great worldly riches. This word, in whose laps rest great worldly riches, is explained in two ways. One, for example, in the case of the king, he has this big responsibility of the kingdom. So that is kind of in his lap. That's one meaning. The another meaning is that the treasure that is there in your lap means even if you're a householder who has children on the lap to look after, right? So if you practice, even these people can, through knowledge, cross the river of the mental afflictions. So it's only dependent upon. If you don't practice, as one citation goes, that means if you practice, even if you remain as a householder, there is liberation. Like many of the Indian kings, like Marbalosava, and things like that. If you don't practice, even if you isolate yourself, stay high up in the mountain, there is no liberation. Just like the marmot, you know that animal marmot, which lives high up in the mountain and sleeps there for 6 months. But that marmot will not get liberation. So simply isolating yourself is not the main factor. It's a contributing factor, but the main factor is how much you are able to, dedicate your time and pay attention to the Dharma practice. I mean, look, for example, when it comes to doing stupid things, we all have time. Going for shopping, we all have time. Going for sightseeing, we all have time. Going for small, playthings, we all have time. Going for material food, we all have time. Hardly anybody escapes that. Even in the most, busy countries, I've seen, people while they are traveling, they are very busy, but they always make sure that there is a cup of tea and coffee while they're traveling in the train and metro and things like that, and then sipping and then eating the burger, So they make sure that they get their drink and food. What about spiritual practice? In terms of spiritual practice, we always say, yes, I will do when I have the time. When do you think you are going to get the time? So whether you get the time or not is dependent upon how much respect and regard, importance you see in the Dharma practice. If you see it's something very important, very relevant, you will find time, just like a football player, just like a singer, they find time because they are interested in that. But when we say we have no time, we are basically saying, I have not much interest, I don't see much importance. So nobody can force you to do that, So you need to think about these big questions. I want permanent happiness. How am I going to get it? I am going to die one day, for sure. So at that time, what is it that will be most useful? The world has a lot of problems, disharmony, fight, conflict. What is the best solution? If you think about all this, the end result will be, unless you change as individual, unless we change as an individual, it is impossible to change the world, to change the family and things like that, even in this life. Right? So that's the process. So therefore he's saying that even if you're a householder, don't remain discouraged. You can get some ideas. And then he to prove this point, he says in verse 116, further, those who gained realization in the past, there are many great teachers like Buddha, those who gained realization of the Dharma did not fall from the sky, nor sprout from the ground like crops. They were before just ordinary persons like you and me, subject to the mental afflictions. But through their practice, they are able to achieve that state. So you can also. Then he says, what need to preach much to the fearless? Fearless means now he's, with respect, talking to the king, that you fearless king, there's no need for me to speak in length. I like this very much, this verse. What need to preach much to the fearless? Subdue your mind. This is the most useful and essential of instructions. The Bhagavan said, mind is the root of Dharma. As I said before, we don't achieve much success in our spiritual practice because we don't do any part of the practice whether it's development of compassion, whether it's practice of patience, whether it's practice of forgiveness, whether it's practice of bodhicitta, whether it's the development of understanding of dependent origination. In none of these areas, we have some hodgepodge idea, and not a specialization kind of thing, So therefore, we are not good in any of these things. So therefore, I find this same teaching I think in the end of Ratnavali or somewhere, where he again addresses the king, and then somewhere he says, okay, you are busy man, you are king, you are very busy. You can't do all this practice. But if you do one practice properly, you will shine out. So here also he says the same thing. To accomplish all this teaching giving, you would be difficult even for a monk. Now, this sometimes they use this word, there are two interpretations. One interpretation is he's saying that I've given many teachings. You can't practice all of them. So if you practice one, that is enough. Another way is, as he said here, all these teachings that I have given you, even a monk living in a forest may not be able to practice it. So how can you practice? You busy king. Meaning, bring meaning to your life by developing the good qualities of whichever instruction you practice. So in the preceding, I must not forget this. In the preceding verse, he says, subdue your mind. Subdue your mind. This is the most useful and essential of the instruction. Subdue your mind. Always maintain calmness of your mind. We get easily excited. We get easily disturbed. Our mind is so sensitive. I've seen this with so many people. If you praise them a little bit, they get so excited. If you defame them a little bit, they get completely deflated. We should not be like this. We should not dance at the tune of other people. We are not a puppet. Right? We are not a puppet. Right? So therefore, in all situations, it's important to maintain calmness of mind. When you maintain calmness of mind, even if the situation is very turbulent, you will find your way out. And you will not suffocate yourself by, extra problems. Right? For example, if you are flying in an aeroplane and suddenly there is a big turbulence, what should you do? One is you should get very nervous, develop fear, start perspiration and all these things. What will happen to my wife? What will happen to my children? What will happen to that amount of money that I deposit into the bank? So you develop all this, the worries, anxieties. Is it going to help you? Will that help, the aeroplane stop the turbulence? No, useless. So instead of developing unnecessary anxieties and fears, as much as possible, try to remain calm. That's very, very important for health, physical health, mental health, and so forth. So therefore, so he's saying that the crux of the matter is maintaining calmness of the mind. Calmness of the mind means a mind which is not disturbed by negative emotions. If you're disturbed by negative emotions, if anger arises, if attachment arises, calmness is gone. And it's visible. If hatred and anger comes, it is very visible. We get very, aggravated and face become red and things like it's very visible. But when other things like attachment comes, it's less visible. But in the long run, that attachment does more damage than anger and hatred. It is a lingering effect. So therefore, the very definition of negative emotion is that when any emotion arises in your mind and leaves your mind completely disturbed, that's the definition of emotion. So don't let these foreigners, foreign enemies, the negative emotions, enter your mind and disturb you. If you are able to maintain that calmness without being disturbed by the negative emotions, you are a good practitioner. And you will be happy all the time. The ups and downs in life, the changing situations, environment, the passing away of a friend, all these things will not disturb you much because you know the reality, the way things are. This is to come. This is to happen. This is life, And once you develop this understanding, you live harmoniously with everyone. And even if you get disturbed, the disturbance will be not intolerable, right? So that is important. Okay. So I already read verse 118. Sorry. Yeah, maintain calmness of mind. Verse 118 it says, to accomplish all this teaching given you would be difficult even for a monk. Or in other words, you can't practice all these teachings, but bring meaning to your life by developing the good qualities of whichever instructions you practice. You may not be able to fight with all the negative emotions, but try to fight that negative emotion which has a predominant presence in you, because that's going to bring a lot of destruction and disturbance in you. For example, if you're a very volatile, angry, hot-tempered person, then deal with that. If you have very strong addiction, deal with that. If you have a strong craving, attachment, try to reduce that. That's what. Similarly, focus more on compassion, focus more on, patience, whichever good qualities you think you can practice. Okay. Rejoice at all the virtues of all beings and dedicate your own threefold good deeds to the attainment of Buddhahood. Then, with this mass of virtue, become a master of yoga in all the worlds of gods and humans for an immeasurable number of births and protect many helpless beings with activities like those of Avalokiteshvara. In a final birth, dispel sickness, aging, desire, and hatred. Then, in a Buddha field, become as did Lord Amitabha, the guardian of the world, with a lifespan of infinite length. So in short, he's saying that to achieve success in this practice, you need to do two practices. One, rejoice when you see other people doing good things. When you see yourself doing good things, then rejoice. That is, I normally jokingly tell people that is the time to sing and dance. If you find you've really done something, rejoice. Rejoice at all the virtue of beings. Rejoice at the virtues of Buddha, Bodhisattvas, and especially rejoice the good is done by seemingly very poor, ordinary people. If you see good qualities in Buddha, Bodhisattva, this is good, but it's understandable because they are already on an elevated state of the path. But if you find, ignorant, stupid people doing good things, it's really like your innocent little child doing good in the class. There's much more reason to enjoy and support that instead of getting jealous. Okay, because in the Bodhisattva practice, we are talking about achieving enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. If that is your dedication, then why should you become jealous when somebody is doing good? Right? You should really rejoice. Okay, rejoice at all the virtue of all beings and dedicate your own threefold good. Threefold good means the good things that you've done physically, verbally, mentally. Dedicate this. Dedicating is really like putting your money in the bank, even if you don't get much interest. Some countries don't get any interest. But even if you don't get much interest, hopefully it will be more safe than putting the money under your bed, right? So dedicate it. As and when you do something good, dedicate it by saying that may this thing that I've done become a cause to become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. Then it will never be lost. And if you don't dedicate, you might do something good. Next moment you get angry, then the good that you've done can be destroyed by that moment of anger, right? So dedicate it. Good deeds to the attainment of Buddhahood. Then with this mass of virtue, become a master of yoga in all the worlds of gods and humans for an immeasurable number of births and protect many helpless beings. So at the end of the day, you should become like an Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara, the deity of compassion, his only purpose is to achieve excellence in all his spiritual practices. Achieving that state of yoga basically meaning controlling one's own mind, right? Yoga, the Sanskrit word yoga means to gain control over our ordinary mind, especially gaining control over our negative emotions. And then you become a master in the true sense of the term to the devas and human beings. Not for one lifetime, because sufferings of beings are countless, right? If you read the life history of Avalokiteshvara, you have this figure of Avalokiteshvara with 11 faces and 1,000 arms. The story goes like this. At one point of the time, Avalokiteshvara promised that he will deliver all sentient beings from suffering to a state of peace. And he actually delivered a number of sentient beings. And next day he goes, he finds more than what he has redeemed. So he does this many times, and there doesn't seem to be an end to the number of suffering sentient beings. Then he said, I give up, it is impossible. So as soon as he broke his promise, his head split into 11 pieces. That is the story. Okay. Then I think it was Amitayus who, I think Amitayus, who said, "My son, don't get discouraged. Don't give up your promise. I will always be there to help you." So he put all these 11 broken pieces together, which made this 11 face or 11 head of Avalokiteshvara, on top of which you will see that image of Buddha Amitayus, right? So that is the story. So we should be like Avalokiteshvara, and the reason purpose is, in a final birth, dispel sickness, aging, desire, all these things that we don't want, dispel them. Then in a Buddha field, becoming, as did Lord Amitabha, the guardian of the world with a lifespan of infinite length. So then, of course, if you become like Amitabha or Amitayus, I don't know, this is Amitabha or Amitayus. This is, I think, wrong translation. This is not Amitabha. This is Amitayus, the God with infinite life. Amitayus. Sepagme. Amitayus. Okay, then when I spoke about the Buddha on the head of Avalokiteshvara is Amitayus. So this is not Amitabha, Amitayus. So in other words, the reason that the Buddhas or Amitayus, they stay continuously for countless eons is to continue to help other sentient beings. So now here in our case, in our ordinary level, what we should think in here, I mean, this is my understanding, is that you should really take very good care of your health, physical health, mental health, and so forth. Because when you talk about helping other sentient beings, cultivating bodhicitta, you become very precious, right? Your life becomes very meaningful. Your life will become source of happiness and benefit to many, many other people. So therefore, if you neglect yourself, you are actually neglecting well-being of others also. So here he is basically saying, one, you should imitate like Avalokiteshvara, develop this compassion to continuously help everybody, and secondly, live long. That's the purpose, right? So he's telling the king to practice like that. Having achieved the stage of victory, which specifies human earthlings and divine celestial youths delighting in sense pleasures, and extinguishes fear, birth, and death for multitudes of helpless sentient beings, spread the fame of immaculate wisdom, morality, and generosity throughout the celestial regions, space, and upon the face of the earth, finally attain the transcendent state of name only, peace, fearless, unsullied, and perfect. So his final instruction is, so in this way, that you should help dispel all the failings that's there in the human and also in the celestial. For example, humans have a lot of desire. We live in the desire realm. Then in the celestial, youths delighting in sensual pleasures means in the celestial realm, it is said that they are very attracted to the young males and females and things like that. So extinguish those craving, those grasping, and because of these sensual pleasures, you develop all kind of fear. So this is the story. You see, the reason that we need to give up all this or reduce all this negative emotion is all wanted sufferings, all the fears that we get comes from attachment, anger, jealousy, hatred. There is this beautiful line in Heart Sutra, similar, Takpa Meves. When your mind is free from fear, then you are at peace. And the fear comes because of the negative emotions. So extinguish fear, birth, death, for multitude of helpless, I like this word very much, multitudes of helpless afflicted beings. Helpless, you see. We ordinary people, because we are so confused, we think we are somebody, very special, very important, very clever, very handsome, very beautiful, things like that. But actually, we are helpless. We want happiness, but don't know how to get that long-lasting happiness. We don't want suffering, but we are completely stuck in that quagmire of suffering, right? We think one thing, but go after another thing. What you desire and what you practice are totally opposite to each other. So, so really, really helpless. Whether you look at the so-called famous politicians or you look at anybody, we are completely lost in the play of the negative emotions. There's nobody who wants suffering. There's nobody who wants to develop negative emotions, but they come because you're helpless. You're addicted to negative emotions. You're addicted to attachment. You're addicted to anger. You're addicted to jealousy. And then we know what is the result of addiction to anything, right? So we're helpless in that sense, really helpless. So help those who are helpless. Don't get angry when you see people doing bad things. Understand them. Just like a physician, when he sees the sick person, he doesn't get angry because he knows that that person is behaving, acting in that way because of that physical illness. So similarly, people are acting in these stupid ways because of illness, of negative emotions. To be nyomo darsegi nyomo tande kazami, as he said in the 400 verses by Ayadarva, that the Buddha sees the negative emotions as enemy and not the person who is related to the negative emotion, because that person is helpless, right? So what we need to do is to bring sanity in the mind of the people, to bring sense in the mind of the people, right? So in that sense, they're helpless. So therefore, what they need is spread the fame of immaculate wisdom, morality, and generosity. Immaculate. Wisdom. Immaculate wisdom means unsullied wisdom that sees the things as they are. And wisdom and all those good qualities can be cultivated only when you have the morality as the foundation. And then especially for something that's very especially very appropriate for the king is to practice generosity. In the Buddhist teaching of attracting the four disciples also, the number one is practice of generosity. In the practice of the teaching of the sixth perfection also, the first is the teaching on generosity. Because it is by not just talking, but actually helping people that they'll come closer to you. They'll start liking you. And it's after that you show the right path, give the teaching. So that is the process. So it is through this way, throughout the celestial region. Now, when we talk about generosity, you see, there are so many millions of people on this earth who had difficulty getting their day-to-day food and clothing and place to sleep. I'm not talking about 1,000 or 100 millions, I'm telling you. I don't need to teach on this. All of you who live in big cities, just venture out a little bit and you will see how much people are struggling, you see. Just for survival, forget about Dharma practice and all this, just for survival, how much people are struggling, you see. So help a little bit to those things. The thing that you may be parting away may be very minor, very insignificant to you, but that's a big, huge thing for that person, for their family, right? So do this as much as possible. That means throughout the celestial region, space, and upon the face of the earth. That means be expansive, to do it as much as possible, right? And then finally attain the transcendent state of name only, peace, fearless, unsullied, and perfect. And when you reach that transcendent stage, when you transcend this worldly existence, when you achieve nirvana and liberation, when you develop this understanding that things are just name, there's nothing that is inherent, independent existence, then you will find the real peace. That is the purpose of understanding shunyata. When you realize shunyata, when you realize that things are merely designated, then there's nothing to crave, nothing to grasp upon, you see. However shiny, however attractive, however glamorous things are, if you take a little bit time to explore the real, structure and nature and the make of that thing, it will be like a bubble, you see. Of course, it's not easy. Right now, when I'm speaking, so speaking is easy. But that is true, actually. But understanding and then applying it in your life becomes very difficult. The other day, I give you the example, bird that flies in the space, which does not provide any obstruction. Because of this absence of obstruction, or absence of hindrance, the bird flies in the space many times, probably in the same route, but the bird probably does not develop grasping to that particular route and thinking that I'll build my nest there, because you can't build a nest. It is devoid of concrete existence. So this is an example. So once you understand that emptiness nature of everything, meaning that things are merely designated, today I'm Lhakdor. My name is Lhakdor, not Ram. Why I can't be Ram? It's just designation, just label. We agreed that we'll all start calling Geshe Lhakdor. So there's no problem. We need to communicate. We need to make sure that everything doesn't get mixed up. So you give a name. That's all. But there's nothing in my core. If you try to find out where this thing called Lhakdor, split my body into parts and find out, there's nothing. It's all designation. Right? So once you develop that kind of understanding, then attachment, craving, grasping, all this will not be there. Then there will be finally attain the transcendence of them only, peace, fearless. As I said, fear comes because of grasping, right? Unsullied and perfect. So that is the state of nirvana that we all need to actualize. All right, so we have finished the text. So let us stop here. I did not watch the.
Yes, Nanjla. Thank you so much, Kishila. Now
Yeah.
we're open for
Yeah,
questions.
I already overstayed 15 minutes.
So today we'll take only 2 questions. I mean, we already have 2 hands raised. So
Okay.
we'll take questions from Natasha and Nili.
Yeah.
And later in the next session, we'll have more questions. Okay.
Yeah.
Natasha, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Kishila. We have 3 questions actually, but I think that we'll ask the first one, and the other 2 we can ask next week when there is a Q&A session, okay?
Yeah.
So the question it's from Oleg. Can we say that the most reasonable and compassionate thing is to strive for the earliest achievement of liberation and enlightenment for the good of everyone? And to do so, the best way is to undertake a long retreat. So is the long retreat the best way?
The goal is, yes, you are right. The goal to achieve liberation and enlightenment is the perfect goal. That is what is taught in Buddhism. But at the same time, you should also be realistic. Whether you like it or not, you're not going to achieve liberation, enlightenment quickly. Okay. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you can't make any progress. So it says, yes, you should do a combination of retreat. Normally we talk about meditative session and post-meditative session, right? So if you have the time and the means to do, isolated meditation practice and retreat for a long time, wonderful, you can do it. That's wonderful. But if you can't afford in terms of money, in terms of many other things, if you can't afford to do that, then still, within a specified duration of time, you can do the meditative session as post-meditative session. And you can do that in one day, meditative session, post-meditative session, right? Or you can do it in a longer way, like 1 week meditative or retreat session. Then after that, you mix with people, that is the post-meditative session. Then you should see whether what you have contemplated, what you have practiced during the meditative session is bearing its fruit during the post-meditative session. Because the trouble arises as and when you mix with people, you see. The taste of the pudding is by eating it. So likewise, when you're meditating alone, all seems very good. Nobody's disturbing you. You feel peaceful, You might get some, back pain and knee pain. Otherwise, it's okay. Nobody's bothering you. But the problem arises the moment you go with people, mix with people, seek all kind of people with, strange behavior, negative emotion, things like that. Then all your negative emotions will start flaring out. So therefore, it is important to maintain that restraint on your body, speech, and mind, not only during the meditative session, but also during the post-meditative session. Okay.
So, okay, next we have Nili Kishla.
Hello. Well, as you said, of course, by definition, when we get to situation or to places, or we meet people who are very nasty on a personal level or national level to us, we become the target, as you said, but we are the target for this kind of reaction or action. Now, the question is, if we take, say, national level, you have protesters or demonstrators, especially in non-democratic countries like Russia or China, from the outset, they know that once they go, and really demonstrate for good reasons, if they are lucky, they get home safely. If not, they are shot dead. So the question is, if they really want, substantially not to change the situation, that's why they go and demonstrate, what would be the way? Because on one hand, they say, the best way is really not to get there and stay at home and not to be, as you say, the target for this kind of, powerful way. But on the other hand, okay, we do want to create a more positive situation. So what is really the way,
No, this is a very complex question, you see, very complex question, because in Buddhist practice, we are talking about long-term solution, not short-term solution or overthrowing somebody, not like that, right? And so it's hard to say, because the problem that arises in any country, again, has its root, in many things. So instead of directly trying to confront, the nasty person or the nasty leader, sometimes, it is by going around and finding the causes, there may be the solution, which may be much, much less risky, things like that. For example, in some countries, many of these terrorist activities come because of lack of employment. This is just an example. For example, if these people who are acting in a terrorist way, if they get proper employment, if they have their own business and shop, I don't think they will engage in all these terrorist activities. So this is just an example. I don't claim that I have all the solutions, So we need to see from many perspectives. Then, of course, then again, even if you join a demonstration, there are ways of doing it, depending upon the situation. It's not saying that let the terrorists, the nasty leaders do whatever they do, don't demonstrate. I'm not saying that. But even when you do the demonstration, there are ways of doing it, right? Because, you see, there is a Tibetan saying, I'll tell you this, a story of a very brave person. So it is said that he's so brave that he never hesitates, fighting with anybody. But sometimes when he's going alone with his horse and the gun, and then stops in a no man's land, there's no particular visible threat. So he dismounts from the horse and starts cooking the tea. But then suddenly he senses something and then stops cooking and then rides his horse and run away. So when people ask, why the hell you are running away? There's nobody. Then he would say, sometimes it is brave to fight. Sometimes it is brave to run away. You see? So you need to be really, really very, very sensible in, depending upon the situation, I mean, there's not much sense simply just blindly jump into something and get killed, and then people will remember you as the hero. So what, how it is going to help you? You see?
Yeah, but even in cases which are not that extreme, I mean, there are cases which are you're not sure dead. But
So that's what that's what I'm saying. So in such a situation, it's not only because of the bad ruler, but even in peace times, people go to the wrong place and they get killed and they die. You see, they meet a thief, unexpected thief or burglar, they get killed. So you always have to be careful, depending upon the situation. Okay.
Thank you.
It will not satisfy you, but
well, if it will satisfy me, I will have no more question, which will be a real problem. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, thank you, Nevi. Thank you so much, Geshe-la. Now that we have completed the text, it feels very strange, like there's a big sense of loss, but then we do look forward to the next session of questions.
Yeah, next session is the session you're going to grill me, huh?
Thank you, Geshe-la. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So as we complete this, we deeply rejoice in the fact that we could take all these sessions. Most of us have been here since the very first day.
Amazing.
So yeah, this has been an unbroken chain of teachings, Geshe-la. We are so grateful for your good health.
No, I'm grateful to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Geshe-la. Everybody is saying thank you to you in the chat box. Thank you so much, and we look forward to the next session and many more sessions in the future, near future. Thank you, everybody, and we will have the prayers now, Geshe-la, please. Thank you. Omane peme hong gewandi nyurdo da chere se wa tu jene to wa chik yamalu ti salam go bara sho. Thank you.